MeatEater's American History, The Hide Hunters. So Volume 3 is out now.
Out October 14th.
Yeah.
This is being released October 13th. So unless you're the type of person that listens to it the day it drops,
it's out now.
As you listen to it, it's out now.
We're giving you a free crash course in the subject right now for an hour.
A little tease.
But then the actual thing is how many hours?
Close to 7. Yeah.
So you're getting a little titillator right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then the big helping, the big Christmas goose is out now, 7 hours.
Anywhere you get your audiobooks.
Anywhere you get your audiobooks.
This is the MeatEater podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater podcast.
You can't predict anything.
Brought to you by First Light. When I'm hunting, I need gear that won't quit. First Light builds no compromise gear that keeps me in the field longer. No shortcuts, just gear that works. Check it out at firstlight.com. That's FIRSTLITE.com. I got 2 things of major interest. Well, 3 things if you count Phil. Phil printed off the script of Christmas. What do they call that?
A Christmas Carol?
It's Christmas Carol. He
Sure.
printed the script off. He's been highlighting his lines. Who are you playing? Cratchit?
Cratchit.
Yeah.
God, seems like you'd play Cratchit.
Robert Cratchit. It was only a matter of time.
They didn't try to get you for Scrooge.
Surprisingly not. No. I think maybe a few more years. Wait till I get in the 40s.
Yeah, that was a joke. I don't think you'd be a Scrooge.
You
know what I could picture you being though?
What's that?
You know what he might be good at? You know the guy that like he's like the nephew, and he's trying to get him. He's trying to get Scrooge fired up about Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But then like Scrooge catches him goofing on him.
Mm-hmm. They tried to get me to play Fred 2 years ago.
Well, you know your first name basis with this guy.
Yeah, that's right.
His name's Fred.
His name's Fred.
Yeah. First name basis.
You wanted more of a role?
No, I was doing a different play, so it's just
Phil's gonna be out there. God bless us. What is one of Cratchit's big lines?
Oh, he doesn't have a lot of big lines. He's just kind of like the anchor for like, kind of the
moral
the
anchor.
moral anchor. Yeah, that's the word.
God bless us. Phil won't be able to do that.
No.
Probably the worst part about what you got coming up, if I had to say.
Let me hear it. And just I would just like to say I love how involved and interested you are in this whole process.
Oh, because I will be there. My wife, like without even knowing you're in it, my wife will be like alerting the family soon about what day this is happening. About what like we will be there.
That's
so I just want to
Go
make
down
sure
to
when
the
I
theater.
get there, I know what's going on.
Sure.
So I can whisper, be like, well, actually, Phil doesn't even like this part. Or this guy kind of bugs Phil, like Phil wasn't very happy with this actor.
I'll spill all the details. Burn bridges along the way, yeah.
But what might be challenging to you is because you have your own kids.
I do. One of them's in the play with me, Steve.
Oh, is he Tiny
He's
Tim?
playing my son. No, he's the middle child. There's an older daughter of Cratchit's, a middle boy, and then Tiny Tim. He's playing the middle boy.
What I was going to say could be a problem for you.
Okay.
Is because you got to deal with your own kids all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You might not want to go down there and need to deal with this, whatever kid it is playing Tiny Tim. You might be like so sort of consumed with your own kids and what they got going on.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you got to get sort of like intimately familiar with this other kid while trying to take care of your kids.
Well, that's kind of Cratchit's big scene is that he's got to kind of break down over the death of Tiny Tim in one of the scenes. I
forgot that he died.
Well, you don't
I was
see
going to
him
say,
die.
it's a good thing that your kids aren't cast as Tiny Tim because they're too healthy. They're too robust, strapping young men.
Thank you. Yes. Randall
They're not
spent time
nearly
with my children.
sickly enough to play Tiny Tim.
Yeah, my little boy, you know how Matthew's on crutches for 6 months?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Were you making a bunch of Tiny Tim jokes?
Well, he's
or was
real
that
jolly.
bad taste?
He's a very agreeable young man.
Yeah.
Very agreeable. So while he was on crutches, that was his nickname. Because he's
Makes sense, yeah.
He's so agreeable.
Yeah.
Just a cheery little fella. He's not disgruntled.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, keep us posted.
Will do.
Maybe Randall, maybe you and your wife would like to go with us.
I'd love to. I don't go to the theater enough.
You don't take in much theater.
Well,
I take in one play.
I went to
A
Phil's
Christmas Carol.
Yeah,
I went to Phil's.
it shows.
I went to Phil's last production, and it was lovely. And I was seated right behind J.K. Simmons, famous Montanan
What?
J.K. Simmons, and he loved it.
He did.
Every time Phil made a joke, I looked at
He
J.K. Simmons, and he was just And
yeah, but you know what? I don't think it. I mean, I'm not knocking on Phil.
Yeah, you are. That's okay.
I don't think that was. I don't think it was genuine.
No,
I think that he knew he's like a big famous theater guy, and he's in theater, and so he's got to act like he's into it.
I think he just
That might be part of it.
But I think he's so into it that, you know, any good theater he gets, it's just like a shot of life into his blood.
Yeah.
You know?
So like little date night. Well, it's gonna be kind of like a weird date night for you because it'll be me, like me and my wife, and you and your wife. That'll feel normal, but then there'll be my children.
That sounds like a normal outing for us.
Yeah.
Because often we don't bring children to anything.
Yeah, because it wouldn't work for us. Like she's gonna make them go.
Yeah.
They won't, you know.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
Don't tell Phil. I mean, they're not gonna want to.
I was 11-year-old once as well. It's okay.
They're not gonna want to go, but they'll be down there.
I mean, I've been workshopping with Phil as to how we can graft sort of the structure of A Christmas Carol onto the live tour.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can have ghosts of hunting season past, hunting season present, hunting season future.
Well, you know now
Apparitions can appear.
this is going to air, Randall, and if this doesn't happen, there's going to be some disappointed fans in the audience. So you
Well, whatever we come up with will have to be equally good or better. I don't
setting the bar.
imagine. I mean, this is a great idea. I'm just going to say that, but whatever replaces it or supplants it will be better. So
Clay's planning on having Brent Reeves fry bluegills on stage every night.
I know I like that.
And I like it too, but you either got to decide you're going to bring it up with the venue, and then they're going to have like
You're
the
gonna
fire
have fire
department.
marshal,
They're going to have
yeah.
like the fire department down there.
And they're going to say our very expensive and thick curtains are going to smell like fish for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you don't bring it up and see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what's going to tickle Phil's fancy? He's going to get jealous.
Yeah.
I want to do a thing, Phil,
Mm-hmm.
and we're already setting this into motion. I'm going to do a thing where it's called Interviews with a Black Bear.
And who's the black bear?
I haven't cast it yet.
Is there going to be there's going to be callbacks, do some scene tests?
Because if I could interview any animal in the world, I would interview a black bear about like what he's up to, what he was thinking. You know, like when you ate the gear oil, like what? You know, like I could see the first sip, right? You're like, I could see why you might take a sip, but you kept eating it.
Is the 20th trash can curiosity, or is it just you can't break the habit?
You know, you throw out black bears as an example, Steve, but I think if this, takes off, I think going through a bunch of different animals it'd be a funny series.
Great interview.
Interview with a turkey, interview with a dove.
Yeah,
whatever.
like if you interviewed a black bear, if you could interview a black bear that finds like Clay Newcomb's bait barrel.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he slowly it'd be like, okay, well, dude, when you first found the bait barrel, didn't you think it was a little, a little suspicious?
Yeah.
That all of a sudden,
and he's like,
here's a barrel.
He's like, things hadn't really been going well for me lately, and I thought maybe my luck had finally changed.
And and all of a sudden there's like a platform up in a tree. Does this stuff, register?
Or like a black bear that finds his way into a convenience store and he's caught on the closed circuit television.
Yeah. Did you know you were at risk?
Yeah. So is this a bear that is post mortem? Like it's a bear.
No. That's why it's going to be a
into
bear
the
to it's going to be a bear to his buddy gets arrowed. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. You got to iron out the details.
I'm not going to bring a bear back from the dead.
You could do a repetitive series, and anytime a black bear's in the news, you just have the bear be.
God, I can't catch a break.
Honestly, my family's so embarrassed.
Here's the other thing what did I say? There's 3 things of interest.
Doesn't matter.
Oh. I just got off the phone.
Great producing.
I'm trying to. Do you guys ever preview Radio Live segments? Oh, we hold this up. Phil said you can hold this somewhere. So I want to
we tease
preview.
it.
I'm trying to get an interview with a guy. I don't even want to say who. I just spoke to a wildlife enforcement agent.
Mm.
I don't want to spoil anything. I got to fill out like a form. I got to fill out a thing to try to get him permission to speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to take it to the suits. So I don't want to blow it.
Yeah.
I just did my pre-interview. Hold that up real nice. What Randall's holding is a wild mink pelt. Did you know?
How's that, Phil?
It's looking shiny.
Should I bring it
It does
closer?
look shiny?
Yeah.
Did you know that if you go in and buy fake eyelashes, there is a chance. I don't want to put statistics on it, but there's a I'm not saying a probability, but like a good chance that when you buy fake eyelashes, it is mink, not advertised as, but it is actually mink. And when you put that up and look at it, my God, does that look like a nice eyelash?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that look.
Just on
the
other
big
people,
fake
or?
eyelash look.
Yeah.
Not my style.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's popular.
Yep.
It'll probably fade
I
from
feel
popularity.
I feel like it came into popularity. I feel like
But it already went.
I don't know.
Oh, it's way popular. Like in 20 years, if you're dressing up for Halloween and you're dressing up as a 2025 person for Halloween, you're going to glue on big fake eyelashes.
Sure.
And people will be like, "Oh, I remember that." But yeah. Mink.
It is striking.
And I was wondering, is that like enough to drive up the mink market? But then, man, think about how many eyelashes are hiding in that thing right there.
Yeah.
It's nothing but
It's
eyelashes.
just tiny little
You could do the whole town. You could give every woman in town new eyelashes with this mink.
We should take a sliver, like a dental floss size sliver off the side of that and try to make a set of fake eyelashes for someone in the office.
It'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
What they do when they're testing, I don't want to blow the interview. I'm going to give this last little tidbit away against my better judgment. When they're testing a shipment, guess what the test is? Did I already tell you what the test is?
You did, and I like it.
Take a cigarette lighter.
Does it smell like hair?
If it smells like burning hair, it'll either smell like burning petroleum base or it'll be like, oh, that's burnt hair.
Yeah.
That is a mink.
That's great.
Fake eyelashes made from a mink. And what I won't be able to tell you, even when we do the interview, I won't be able to tell you the country of origin. It's not known. We're not knowing if these mink are American caught mink or European wild mink. Third thing of interest. Can you pull up the photo, Phil?
Let's do it.
This is of tremendous interest. You got your thing handy?
I do.
Randall and I just did probably one of the best, probably our best piece of video work ever in terms of what I think is interesting. Phil has a picture held up of me and Randall here holding two. It's the big hunks of fat that come off the back of a buffalo. It's called the Depuyer. The Depuyer, French. If you imagine like picture that you pull the hide off a deer, because more people have done that than pulled the hide off a buffalo. Pull the hide off a deer, and he's got like the big caps of fat on a real healthy deer, the big caps of fat that lay over the backstrap. But these are, in this picture we're holding up, these are like giant slabs of fat removed from over the backstrap and hump of a buffalo. And working on the latest installation of MeatEater's American History, The Hide Hunters, 1865 to 1883, we ran across this passage, which Dr. Randall will share with you.
Another important article of food, the equal of which is not to be had except from the buffalo, is Depuyer or Depuyer.
Depuyer.
It is a fat substance that lies along the backbone, next to the hide, running from the shoulder blade to the last rib, and is about as thick as one's hand or finger. It is from 7 to 11 inches broad, tapering to a feather edge on the lower side. It will weigh from 5 to 11 pounds, according to the size and condition of the animal. This substance is taken off and dipped in hot grease for half a minute, then is hung up inside of a lodge to dry and smoke for 12 hours. It will keep indefinitely and is used as a substitute for bread, but is superior to any bread that was ever made.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We made it. We made a whole video about making it.
Mm-hmm.
We followed those instructions. Why do people say to the T?
I don't know.
We followed them to
That's
the
a great
T.
question.
You want to know why the whole 9 yards? You know what that means?
No.
It's like what was that like Spitfire P-38 airplane in World War II? Is it a P-38?
A P-38 is a Thunderbolt, I believe.
Oh, well, you know Nate Mason,
Yeah.
big Army guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling me that belt, that machine belt,
Mm-hmm.
the ammo belt, 27 feet long. So to give him the whole 9 yards is to give him 27 feet of ammo out of that aircraft.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't know why people follow stuff to the T. We followed it to the T, and I'm not going to tell you what happened. You know how I teased the mink thing where I'm not telling the secrets? I'm not telling the secrets of what happened with our Depuyer.
Yeah.
This project is sitting with Seth Morris right now, who's editing it.
I had a crisis of confidence in my answer. The P-38 is the Lightning. Just correcting myself, circling back there.
And I didn't fact check Nate Mason on that, but he takes a lot of pride in being able to offer up little things like that.
Yeah, now that I feel like I have heard that somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Takes a lot of pride in that kind of stuff. If he waves you down, on the staircase or something, it's going to be to tell you like a little tidbit or to correct you about something you got wrong.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting one. Then we're going to talk a whole bunch more about buffalo because we're going to talk about the hide hunter era.
Really quick, just before you get into this, can completely derail you, Steve. It says that there's no consensus about where to a T comes from, but the best accepted candidate is that it's a shortened version of to a tittle. The word tittle refers to those tiny little additions you have to make when writing letters, like dotting an I or a J or crossing a T.
That sounds like something Bob Cratchit would say.
Yeah.
To the tittle. To the tittle, Tiny Tim.
But sir, it's Christmas. Is that a Bob Cratchit line?
Yeah,
Does
it
he
is
protest
actually.
that it's
He does.
Christmas?
He tries to leave right at the stroke of 5 or 6, and Scrooge gives him a dirty look, and he says, "But sir, it's Christmas."
Yeah. God bless us, the biggest goose in all of London. Here's a really good one that a guy sent in. We haven't done one of these in a while. First, this guy starts off by saying he's rarely heard our team and points to me, pass up an opportunity to discuss, argue about semantics. So check this out. This cannot stand.
Mm-hmm.
This guy recently moved to South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Gets to study in the state hunting regs just to get a grip on what's going on. Okay. And he notices within South Carolina's hunting regs that they have an explicitly stated still hunt season. Still hunt season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ask any American boy what still hunting is, and what are they going to tell you?
Creeping quietly through the woods.
Yep.
Slowly. Shooting a deer before it sees you.
Take a couple steps,
Yep.
stop and listen. Take a couple steps, stop and listen. Still hunting. So he's like, why would they have a season where you can only still hunt? So he calls Fish and Game to say, what's up with how you can, why are you saying like you can only hunt this method?
Can I
You
sit
mean
in a tree stand?
You can't stand hunt during the still hunt season? To which they say, no, you dummy. Still hunting is hunting without a dog. It is the no dog season.
Yeah.
Who in the world?
I would have just called it quiet.
I'd call it no dog time.
Right.
It'd be a good song.
No, don't.
I'd call it no dog time. Like,
Is
you know
it
what
a
I'm
bluesy
saying?
song or is it like an upbeat pop song?
No, it's like a country party song.
Yeah.
Parties.
It's a party.
It's like a
Morgan Wallen.
It's a honky tonk party song, dude. No dog time. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. I have never, but it might be that, like, I don't know. If you like, I'd be curious. I don't mean to dog on it because I'd be curious.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, the other day I was with.
Already halfway through the lyrics.
Okay. Here, oh man, I hate to even get into this. I don't want to get into this. I was with Dan and Reed Isbell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. From God's Country podcast. And we're eating this. We're in this restaurant. And they got like paddlefish eggs, paddlefish caviar. And I'm eating mine, and I get a little bit of that caviar on my upper lip, and it's like Marilyn Monroe's birthmark.
Yeah,
Dan Isbell goes, Marilyn Monroe.
that's good.
But then there was like everyone at the table detected a pause before he like did like a gotcha.
Yeah,
and the debate was, did he know? Or did it only occur that he was going off the birthmark and said Marilyn, because Marilyn Monroe has a famous birthmark. Did he know before the delivery, the Roe connection? So we wanted to get the security camera footage from within the restaurant to see if like,
when the twinkle in his eye.
like I felt the twinkle was like delayed. Like he goes like Marilyn Monroe and then does a ha-ha.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, I knew all along. That's why I said it.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it for a
No
second.
one bought it.
No.
I was like, there was like, you said it, and then there was like a beat, and then it hit.
Yeah, I'm dubious.
I mean, I'm still impressed.
Oh, yeah, totally
It's great.
impressed.
It's great.
Why was I talking about her?
Dogs.
Dogs.
You don't mean to dog on the
Yeah,
South.
why would I got talking about the Roe?
Well,
Either way.
you did one of those. You said,
Oh, I just did one.
You said, I don't mean to dog on
that's what it
them.
was.
Yep,
That's what it was.
Yep.
So Marilyn Monroe, no. I would be curious if you went to dog hunting states.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I honestly don't know the answer to this. People can write in. Like if I went to a dog hunting state, so I go to Arkansas,
Right.
South Carolina, there aren't many left. Which makes me a little bit sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, I'm going to still hunt. Like, people said, like, how'd you get that buck? And I said, I was like, I was still hunting. Would they be like, he was hunting without dogs?
Or would they be like, he was actually still hunting?
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like if it's a universal convention in states that have dog hunting, that still hunting is hunting without dogs.
Or do even dog guys look at the regs and they're like, what?
Yeah, they could have pretty much picked any other descriptor there, and it would have caused less confusion.
Mm-hmm. Here's another quick one. This is good. Thing came in, an obscure question Steve may be uniquely equipped to answer. And I got to tell you right off the bat, I'm going to let you down, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good. There's a phenomenal book that I recommend to anyone out there called Shadows on the Koyukuk. It's about a Koyukon. So the Koyukon people are like a tribe. It wouldn't be that, but like a tribe of Native Alaskans, and these Native Alaskans, the Koyukon people, are centered around the Koyukuk River, which flows into the Yukon River. Sidney Huntington is a Koyukon man, and Shadows on the Koyukuk is like his story of growing up on the river. It's a phenomenal book. In the book, there's this passage, and I am very the person that wrote in. You're right. I'm very familiar with the passage. And in this passage, he says, basically, in Shadows on the Koyukuk, a big part of the book is that this boy and his siblings, like their mom dies, and they're just like left out in this cabin. It's a true story. That's a big part of his life story. Is just trying to like keep his little siblings alive without parental help. And he says, supper that night was rice and fish we had caught the day before. He's talking about the night his mom died. Supper that night was rice and fish we had caught the day before. White fish have a hard, gristly part in their gut that looks as if it has tentacles all over it, which is a favored delicacy of Koyukon Indians. Mom fried and ate this part. He says, that whitefish gut killed my mother. Mom called us into the cabin and told us she wasn't feeling well. Go upstairs and go to bed, she said. We found our mother lying at the bottom of the stairs, half out the door as she had been when we had gone to bed. Her eyes were closed. Most of her tongue protruded from her mouth, and it was bitten almost in two. The author, this is the guy that wrote the letter in, Matt, Continuing. The author doesn't elaborate any further on how the hard, gristly part in the whitefish's gut killed his mother. Google searches have failed to shed any light on the mechanism of death. And he's wondering, you got any thoughts about that? I don't think, I wasn't there, but I remember reading it. I don't think that that's what his mom died from. When she bit her tongue, wouldn't it be that she had a seizure?
Possibly.
Bit her tongue in half.
Yeah. Although you don't know what triggered that.
No.
Yeah, I did my
I
own.
always felt it was a coincidence.
I did my own 5 minutes of Googling and I found the part of the stomach that looks like that. And a
lot of fish have it.
And I found, I actually found a cookbook of like traditional.
How many minutes did it take you to do all this?
Oh, 5 to 10.
Sure you're not lying?
Pretty good with computers.
5. It just doubled to 10. Did you notice that, Phil?
Well, I thought you were.
I started to call them out and it jumped to 10.
I thought you were so impressed by the depth of my research that I thought 5 seemed unrealistic. I really don't know how much time I spent on this. It was in the hazy, it was in like the first cup of coffee stage of my morning.
Go on. Just try to do it without bragging.
I actually found.
Can you do it without bragging? So bad?
Sure. Okay. There exists, available online to any internet researcher, a book of traditional Koyukon recipes.
Is that right?
There's pages and pages about how to prep whitefish.
And you spent a couple hours going through that, huh?
Yeah. I scanned through it. I scanned through it poorly because I'm not bragging.
Mm-hmm.
I scanned through it haphazardly and
specifically
poorly.
neg yourself now.
But I was unable to find anything. Surely a talented researcher could have found the answer, but I was unable.
But you found the recipe.
I did, yeah.
And you found no reason. Like hey, it's like, what's that fish liver that is toxic? You found no thing like, hey, be careful when eating.
No, I couldn't find anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't have found anything anyway, just because of how bad I am at that stuff.
So it doesn't really say, it doesn't mean it's not out there.
No, I think someone else should probably back me up.
Yeah, I don't even know why we're trusting a single thing you say.
Surely
so bad at research.
I missed it on the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always read that, and again, I can't recommend that book enough. Have you read that book?
Mm-hmm. A long time ago.
I read that and wondered about that. I just feel like it's like I'd never want to argue with the brother, but I think something else happened.
Yeah, there's just like it's hard to make a 1-to-1 connection there.
Yeah, think about when you get real sick from eating.
Mm-hmm.
Like your mind will kind of find culprits.
Oh yeah.
I remember one time I got super sick in Mexico, like deathly ill, and I couldn't eat avocados for forever. But I had a ham and avocado. We bought like some room temp air dried ham and avocado and bread. I got deathly ill. It wasn't the avocado.
Yeah.
But dude, a week later, I could have had a big old ham sandwich, but avocado, I couldn't go near an avocado for 2 years. So I feel like stuff stands out in your mind.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And you're looking at this crazy octopus tentacle
Especially when you're a kid.
Yeah, you're looking at that and you're like, good Lord. And then like, heaven forbid, like your ma dies the next day, you're like, it's got to be that stomach.
Yeah, she says she wasn't feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
It probably could have not mattered what she had for dinner.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about. We're going to dig in and explain a really fascinating period of American history. And Randall and I have done these in the past. We did one on Daniel Boone and the Long Hunters. We did one of these episodes on Daniel Boone and the Long Hunters. We did one of these episodes on the Mountain Men. So Jim Bridger, John Coulter, and the Mountain Men. And we're going to do one right now on sort of the era that the backwoodsman era that came after, the really big hit that came after the Mountain Man era, which was the hide hunters. So to start, Randall's going to lay out a little bit about, like, why are we talking about those three things? Like why are we bucketing those three things? What makes them similar? What makes them distinct?
Yeah, so these are the first 3 installments of this MeatEater's American History series. And what we've focused on in that series are these eras of sort of frontier market hunting, where large groups of individuals are going out. Well, I should say relatively large groups of individuals are seeking sort of a new life by harvesting wildlife resources for profit. And that's a phenomenon you see repeated over and over again in American history, and often aligns with sort of bigger shifts in the larger national story, like the Mountain Men aligns with the Louisiana Purchase and the opening up of the Rocky Mountain West. The Long Hunter era, which is in the late 1760s, early 1770s, that aligns with sort of this window of opportunity between the French and Indian War and the American Revolution, broadly speaking. But in each of these instances, there are these individuals that go out into what is then land largely unknown to them and occupied by native people, and they're harvesting wildlife resources on the scale that's sort of unimaginable to us today. And in doing so, they also leave behind some of our most told and retold stories of wilderness living and outdoor adventure that have sort of, been passed down to us as like the origin story of like American hunters and anglers, right? But in this series, we're asking, what were they doing really? Like, what were they after? How are they acquiring it? Who are they selling it to? What was it being used for? And what are the various like larger contextual factors that shaped how they lived the lives the way they did? So, like I said, the first one was the Long Hunters, and Daniel Boone is the most well-known of those. These are guys largely coming out of Western North Carolina, Western Virginia, and they're going across the Appalachian Mountains to shoot white-tailed deer for their skin, which is used in leather goods, primarily manufactured in Britain. Breeches, but all sorts of other, and breeches are like knee-length pants, like the goofy things you see on paintings of old guys with big white wigs.
Yeah. When you see if you see like an old guy or like or Napoleon or someone, he's got like some white pants, some tight fitting white
with
pants,
buttons on the front,
might be buckskin,
like a little button fly flap. Yeah,
could be American buckskin.
Yeah, and so these are essentially poor farmers living on the frontier, and it's an economy where they don't have ready access for cash. But one thing, and their farms don't produce enough of a surplus to really sell on a market. But the one good that they can take to market and sell to buy the things that they need to buy is white-tailed deer skin. So after the French and Indian War, when it's a little bit safer to go across the Appalachian Mountains, they start going over to Kentucky, Tennessee, basically the Ohio River Valley and the Cumberland River Valley, and shoot deer by the hundreds and thousands and pack them by mule train across the mountains. And they stay out there for months, sometimes a year or longer. And that's how they get the name Long Hunters.
Long ass hunt.
Long ass hunt. It refers to the duration of their trips. And these are sort of smaller groups. Oftentimes it's like family members, neighbors, and they organize their expeditions along these lines of kinship and sort of clan, and it's a really interesting sort of fleeting moment, because in 1775 the first permanent white settlement is established in Kentucky, and then also you have the beginnings of some of the frontier violence that ultimately bleeds into the Revolutionary War. So that's the Long Hunters.
Yep. That's a interesting thing that we compare through all these is these, like, what are the groups, the group dynamics. And you made a point with the Long Hunters. When you're reading about Long Hunter expeditions, it's tons of brother-in-laws. Yeah. Tons of cousins. Tons, you know what I mean?
Brothers, father-in-laws, brother-in-laws.
Yep.
This guy married this guy's sister.
Exactly. And these like sort of like these familial, very neighborly clans.
Yeah.
But it could be as many as 40 people.
And one of the big differences too between the Long Hunters and some of the later volumes the individuals we look at in the later volumes, is they don't leave behind a lot of records. They're rural people. They're largely illiterate. Most of their stories that we have of them are recorded after the fact by interviews with their survivors, or maybe interviews with them later in life. Like talking to an old man about what he did in his 20s. And so the source material for that, with the exception of Daniel Boone, is very, very thin. So we had to do a lot more sort of piecing together and hypothesizing in that story than we did in some of these other ones.
Yep. Okay, recap mountain men. Like when you hear the word mountain men, which it's an abused term.
It is.
It means like, yeah. It's not like an old hermit that lives up in the mountains.
And there's
like when you see mountain men from a historical standpoint, it's something very specific.
Yeah. So as we use the term, and most, I guess, people who are in this field use the term, it's referring to Rocky Mountain beaver trappers who went west after the return of Lewis and Clark. So it's 1806. It really is sort of becomes a big thing in the late 1820s, mid 1820s, late 1820s, when they developed the rendezvous system, which is a way of supplying these trappers and also getting their furs to market. But they're out there in the Rockies, sort of nomadically traveling from watershed to watershed in organized groups, trapping beaver, which is being used to produce wool felt. So really, they're not after the skin; they're after the hair, and the hair not attached to the skin, which is sort of an interesting twist when you think about like the fur trade in general.
It's like when you're making mink eyelashes.
Like mink eyelashes, exactly. I was curious when we were talking about that if they're if they're just gluing them in place on something else.
They're just plucking them. There's no way they're putting leather.
I think it'd be cool if you had
the leather on there. You have all the but the under fur.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what we failed to mention?
What's that?
MeatEater's American History, The Hide Hunters. So Volume 3
yes,
is out now.
Out October 14th.
Yeah.
This is being released October 13th. So unless you're the type of person that listens to it the day it drops,
it's out now.
As you listen to it, it's out now.
So MeatEater's American History, The Hide Hunters, which we're giving you a crash course in the subject right now. We're giving you a free crash course in the subject right now for an hour.
Little tease.
But then the actual thing is how many hours?
Close to 7. Yeah.
So you're getting a little titillator right now.
Mm-hmm.
But then the big helping, the big Christmas goose.
With all the trimmings.
Shilling and a pence.
Is out now, 7 hours.
Anywhere you get your audiobooks.
Okay.
So yeah, Mountain Men is a story that I think a lot of people might be familiar with just when they think of a frontiersman trapper. But one of the interesting differences between mountain men and long hunters is that these expeditions, because they're going across the continent and there's a ton of logistics involved, they're actually organized by corporations, and they have a lot of capital, and there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes jockeying for control of different corporations, and so sells their interest, whatever. But out of that, you get the fact that these trappers, a lot of them just see an ad in a newspaper that's like, do you want to go west and trap beaver for 2 years, 3 years, and sign on? And so, like, while Daniel Boone and some of these long hunters were going and hunting with their family and their neighbors, guys like Jim Bridger were sort of, he's 18 years old and doesn't have a lot of, he's sort of rootless. His parents are dead, and he sees an ad in the newspaper and shows up at an office in St. Louis and signs
an employment agreement.
Yeah.
That's the funniest thing you think about when you think about these guys, like the mountain men that are out there living off the land for multiple years with very little resupply. Most of those guys start out, it's like, it's a job.
Yeah.
And it has a pay scale, and you commit.
It's financial security.
There's not like an HR office, you know, but I mean, it's like a job though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like it's interesting because whenever you read a story about like the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, they always mention this one really famous advertisement where they're seeking 100 enterprising young men to go up the Missouri. And so, yeah, like, although it seems like this really distant sort of ancient world, they're finding job ads in the newspaper and following up on them to become a trapper. And then that story dies out really with the virtual extirpation of beaver from the Rockies, and at the same time, there's a collapse in the beaver felt market. There's a bunch of different reasons for that, but the silk top hat becomes the preferred fashion, and essentially the beaver trade sort of vanishes. And in the 1838, 1839, when these guys are coming together for rendezvous to sell their furs, they sort of see the writing on the wall. And then 1840 is the last official rendezvous, which is like the big commercial exchange that sort of keeps this whole world turning.
When Randall's talking about for hats, like if you imagine Honest Abe Lincoln, so Honest Abe Lincoln is running around in that hat 1860.
Mm-hmm.
If he was running around in that hat in 1830, his would have been wool felt, beaver wool felt. But I believe Honest Abe was by Civil War was wearing a silk hat.
I think it was a silk hat.
You know, same cut, like those crazy looking hats.
Yeah.
You keep like a house cat up inside there. But
seems like a very inefficient.
Oh, just an insane.
It's like when
hat.
you're wearing a backpack and it catches on everything over your head, and you just go, "Oh shit, I'm wearing my backpack."
Yeah.
You know, I would imagine that a guy with a top hat would have a similar issue.
Yeah, it's like a guy trying to wear a cowboy hat on an airplane,
especially a tall guy like Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
Better have high door openings.
Where are we at? Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Which moves us into the hide hunter era.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's one of the funny things about working on these series of all these American commercial hunter, market hunter periods. For the first couple volumes we did, the long hunters, the mountain men, you have all these American heroes, these mythologized characters. And what's interesting about these American heroes, these mythologized characters, is there's more awareness. There's more awareness about the individuals and the lives they lived than there is awareness about what they actually were doing for a living. Meaning people know the name Daniel Boone. Okay. So if you went out and just pulled random adult Americans off the street.
Yeah.
And said, "Have you ever heard of Daniel Boone?" You're going to get a nod. Yes. What was up with him? Some kind of hunter, some kind of frontiersman, whatever.
He lived in the woods.
Yep. But if I said, can you explain to me what he did for a living? You're going to have a very low success rate on getting a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
So people know the name. They know this pioneering figure, but they're not clear on what he was doing. He's known for, people have an understanding that he was a sort of explorer settler, which he was, but not necessarily intentionally, being like, he wasn't he wasn't a promoter. He is very tightly affiliated with, people know him as a Kentucky figure. He left Kentucky, died elsewhere, right? There's not a lot of awareness of what he was. Same with if I went to you and said, Davy Crockett. People are going to be like, yes, familiar with the name Davy Crockett. And I said, can you explain to me some of the things Davy Crockett did for a living? And they probably wouldn't have a very good sense. The Mountain Man era. People know Jim Bridger, explorer, whatever. But if I said, but why was he exploring? They might not know that his sole focus over much of his professional career, his sole focus was like trying to locate populations of beavers in order to trap them. But they stand as these American icons. They're American heroes. Now that we're moving into the hide hunter era, and when we say the hide hunters, what we're talking about is buffalo hunters. But there's a long history of being buffalo hunters. When we talk about the hide hunters, what we're talking about is a very specific type of buffalo hunters. We're talking about a type of buffalo hunter who was hunting buffalo in order to get the skins, which were just sold as dried, what they call flint hides, not tanned. They were collecting skins, pegging them out to dry, and selling them. And these were skins that were being tanned into leather products in the East. That is what we call a hide hunter, someone who's using like a systematic system of slaughter of buffalo in order to sell hides in a specific period of time. One of the things that struck me the most when we started on this hide hunter period is that here you're now entering into a type of frontiersman, a type of market hunter from an era that produced zero heroes.
Mm-hmm.
That rhymes. Well, if I left the S off, it would have.
Put it in the dog song.
There's no heroes. Like, there's no mythologized figure. And you can ask yourself, why are there no famous heroic hide hunters? And I think that there's probably one main reason why. While the long hunters like Boone extirpated deer from certain areas or greatly reduced deer herds, wiped out elk herds, wiped out buffalo herds, they're not known as the guys that did that.
Mm-hmm.
That crime hasn't been pegged on them. The mountain men, Jim Bridger, they extirpated beavers across a bunch of their range. They wiped out regional populations of beavers, but the crime hasn't been pinned on them.
And a lot of people probably don't even know there was a crime.
Yep. They probably don't know that those things happened.
Yeah.
But when you get into the buffalo hide hunters, who, as we'll explain the years, who from the end of the Civil War to about 1883, they virtually eliminate. They kill about 15 million buffalo. They kill them until there's less than 1,000 left in the United States. It is very well understood that they committed the crime.
And we're still living with that
consequence.
That consequence today. Like,
yep.
Even though they didn't wipe out the buffalo, biologically speaking, the buffalo never recovered from that episode as a wild animal.
Yeah, the best way I've heard that distinction explained is I remember years ago someone explaining that they weren't driven to genetic extinction, but they were driven to ecological extinction, meaning they ceased to have an ecological
part
function.
Of the landscape. Yeah.
And we understand that these buffalo hunters did that, and that crime has been pinned on them. And when you watch a documentary that deals with this era, they're usually just treated as villains. They're the villains. Everyone agrees that they're the villains. We don't have buffalo hunter heroes. We don't make buffalo hunter movies. There aren't movies where the buffalo hunter winds up being heroic and saving everybody. Right? And Jeremiah Johnson, he doesn't run into and get saved by a buffalo hunter because they're villains.
Yeah.
He gets saved by an old mountain man because they're heroes.
And the other thing too that we get into this in the audiobook is that there's a shift in consciousness that occurs during their lifetime, where all of a sudden you see the rise of the modern conservation movement, the founding of the Boone and Crockett Club, the curtailment of market hunting by the federal government, and this all happens during their lifetimes. Sort of almost as soon as the smoke is cleared from their shooting, all of a sudden market hunting is a very bad thing.
Yeah.
In sort of the cultural and political American consciousness. And so they sort of live in this weird space where the world that they did these acts in and killed all these buffalo was not the world that they lived in 20 years later.
Yeah, Randall and I were going to touch on this today. I'm just going to touch on it now. I think we're going to touch on this today.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about to keep in mind about this hide hunter thing, and we're going to talk about why the years. Well, let's do why the years now, because I want to talk about the way in which this era, the way in which this era turns into the modern era. We'll get into this more, but we make the point in there that some of these buffalo hide hunters lived to see the publication of Sand County Almanac. Right? They lived to see the presidency of an individual, Theodore Roosevelt, who was like an adversary of the market hunters.
Yeah, wanted them eliminated.
Yeah, so they were like living a period of sort of watching their peers, watching their contemporaries come to condemn them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you were making that point, but I mean,
Yeah.
I just think that it's important to realize that like there was almost like no period when they were celebrated. A lot of them got bitter about this, and we tell that story in the book. A lot of them get to be old men, and they're bitter.
Yeah.
They're bitter about how they've been disparaged in their own lifetimes for what they did.
Yeah, and in some ways, I mean, there are other parallels I could draw, but they're in their later in life, once they're no longer living in this world where the hide hunt was a good thing, or you know, even a neutral thing. Like once it became a hot button topic and the buffalo are wiped out and conservation's on the rise, they often would look back and explain what they were doing in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to reimagine what drove them to do what they did in order to align themselves with things that were still okay at that time. And so a lot of them said, well, we did it to tame the frontier. We did it to conquer native people. We did it to sort of, break Indian resistance and open up the West for settlement. But what's fascinating is when you go back and you read the accounts that were written at the time, as opposed to like what they wrote down in 1900 or 1910, they always say, I was young, I needed money. It was free for the taking. All you needed was a rifle. You go out there and you get as many as you can.
Make a lot of money.
And there's none of these guys at the time are sort of are explaining their actions in a way that's like part of a broader national story of quote unquote progress. But as old men,
oh yeah,
living in the 1920s, 1930s, or even just back in like during the Roosevelt presidency, they're saying, oh well, we were part of the American story. We weren't bad guys. The whole money thing was just a side issue. What we were really trying to do was open up the West for white settlement.
Yeah, they get terribly sentimental too.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a direct quote, but it would be you'll get this kind of sentiment from them as old men. Like, when I look and see children coming out of Sunday school in the Texas Panhandle, running into the arms of their waiting mothers,
yeah,
I think, by God, I did the right thing.
And one of the interesting things about these sort of after the fact explanations for their actions, especially as it comes to like the consequences for Native people, like they in the early 1900s, they said, well, this was a good and necessary thing. We did it so that we could defeat the tribes of the plains. At the time, they did that because they thought it was something worth celebrating. They said what they did in that way. They explained their actions because in a way that would be celebrated. But then decades later, once people started thinking differently about what happened to the tribes of the plains, they latched on to those explanations because it made the guys seem even worse. It made the hide hunters seem even more villainous.
Yeah.
And so, like, you almost have to go back to what they were saying while they did it, rather than what they were saying long after the fact, once their actions had sort of taken a big shift in sort of the public opinion.
Yeah, we well, I'm just gonna say it now. I keep trying to be like really disciplined about what we bring up when, but there's a hide hunter who kills over 10,000 buffalo. Okay. Who lives through the Korean War.
Yeah.
He lives to see, we mentioned, he lives to see like Playboy magazine being published.
Yeah, he lived to be 104 years old.
Lives to see. Here's a guy that's on the Texas plains fighting Comanches, shooting buffalo for a living, and he lives to like read Playboy magazine, see the introduction of the Corvette.
The first Burger King opened before he died, and the first nuclear submarine launched before he died.
Yeah.
But he listened to the president on the radio. He drove cars. Like there's stories about these buffalo hunters the wife of one buffalo hunter later in life said, I hadn't been back to Dodge City since the buffalo hunt. And the interviewer's like, well, why did you go to Dodge City? Why did you go back? And she goes, oh, there was a motorcycle race. We're going to watch a motorcycle race.
Yeah, that thing we spent a lot of time on is just how abrupt at the end of this era, how like abrupt the country changed out of it. And a thing we bring up as well, we keep talking about these certain hide hunters who lived through the buffalo slaughter and became, they kind of stayed, like they kind of wanted to continue to defend themselves. And we talk about that there's no hide hunter heroes. Now, that's not entirely accurate because there's a lot of mythologized Western figures who became mythologized later for their exploits as gunfighters, lawmen, gamblers, but who you wouldn't realize cut their teeth as hide hunters. Wyatt Earp. There's like historians a little bit question like how into hide hunting Wyatt Earp was. He was hide hunter adjacent, maybe did some hide hunting. Wyatt Earp did some hide hunting. I'll tell you who absolutely was a hide hunter. Pat Garrett, the man who killed Billy the Kid. We recently had
Brian Burroughs.
Brian Burroughs on. No, Burrow.
I think it's Burrow.
Burrow. Thing of William Burroughs.
I know that's what screwed me up.
I always do that.
We recently had the writer Brian Burrow on in his very excellent book, The Gunfighters. And in The Gunfighters, he tells the story of the night Billy the Kid died in New Mexico. And he talks about the last person Billy the Kid addressed. He said, "Quien es?" to a man named John Poe. And then was shortly thereafter shot and killed. Well, said it again. Said the same thing. Goes into a bedroom. He passes a guy outside and says, "Quien es?" Who is that? Goes into a bedroom, says it again to someone in the room, not knowing who he's looking at, and that guy kills him dead. Those two guys were buffalo hide hunters, but no one knows John Poe and Pat Garrett as buffalo hide hunters.
Yeah, they're former buffalo hide hunters at the time.
Yeah, Bat Masterson, gunfighter, becomes a sports writer, buffalo hunter. So it's not fair to say that the buffalo hunters didn't produce heroes, but they didn't produce heroes from that era.
They shed that identity and became new people.
Yeah. Some became like dudes that were presidents of banks.
A lot of them got killed in bars and card games.
Many died violently. And that's another thing about like the legacy of the hide hunters is you'll find people say, oh, the hide hunters were nothing but horse-thieving scoundrels.
Yeah.
And then other historians, including Elliot West, who we had on the podcast years ago, Elliot West has this passage like, oh, they became candy salesmen and high school principals.
Yeah.
And you're like, both those things are true. They were some horse-stealing scoundrels, and some became candy salesmen. Like, they became all things.
Yeah. Elliot West, in that passage, he makes a point that, like, the hide hunters stepped out of normal life to become hide hunters. You know, they were like farmers. They were guys that worked on the railroad. They have these... They weren't born to be hide hunters.
Yes.
Right? And
not like Boone was born to be a hunter.
Right. And there was an opportunity, and they stepped into that world, and they did what they did, and then that world vanished along with the buffalo, and they moved on to the next thing.
It's more appropriate to say, this is a segue, it's more appropriate to say that these buffalo hide hunters, who we know and understand and have condemned for exterminating the American buffalo, yes, they stepped out of normal life, but it's better to say they stepped out of the American Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that it's something that you hear about this era. Like, a lot of these buffalo hunters were former Civil War soldiers, or somehow their lives were affected by the Civil War, but you really don't have a full appreciation for it until you start reading their individual stories by the dozens. and it's overwhelming. Frank Mayer, the guy who lived to see Burger King and Playboy magazine, he was a 13-year-old drummer boy.
I wonder if you ever read Playboy while eating Burger King.
I think he
in a Corvette.
At 104, I hope he was doing all that stuff. It's doubtful though.
He said, baby, I'm gonna take my Corvette down, pick up the April issue, get a burger, get a Whopper.
Just for the articles, of course.
Yeah. Well, that was back when you really could read some good stuff in there,
We used to be a country.
So Frank Mayer, the guy who lived to be 104, he was a 13-year-old drummer boy serving, they think, in his father's artillery unit at the Battle of Gettysburg. And if you can imagine what he witnessed during that period of time as a 13-year-old, it's hard to imagine him going on to just live a quiet life somewhere, right? And he even makes the point in his memoir that after the Civil War, there were a ton of men who didn't know what was next, but they knew they had to move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were sort of lost. They were looking for purpose. A lot of them, they'd lost family members. They might have lost fathers. John Cook. I don't know if we mentioned Cook yet.
No, we haven't mentioned Cook yet, but a very Cook also comes out of one of the most ugly, violent aspects of the Civil War, and we explained it a little bit, which is not widely known about what was going on in that period. But
yeah, so his family moves out to Missouri, and so they get all wrapped up in the guerrilla fighting that's going on the Kansas-Missouri border. And his brother is shot 27 times. His brother was serving.
Shot to pieces.
Yeah,
a revenge attack.
And his brother is serving in a Union military unit, and some Confederates earlier that day had killed some Union soldiers and put on their uniforms, and so they marched right up to Cook's brother, and he got shot 27 times. And the commanding officer of that unit gave John Cook his brother's hat that's just soaked in blood and full of holes, and says, this is what we have left of your brother, bring it to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though Cook himself was again, a youngster, he didn't bear the brunt of the fighting. The Civil War profoundly brought an end to his childhood innocence. And then there's guys that served as prisoners of war, and guys that there's one hide hunter who won the Congressional Medal of Honor. And there's we have stories of a guy who was a Confederate soldier he was at a fort that went under siege, and 2/3 of the guys in there with him had died by the time they surrendered. So you can imagine.
And then that's the guy, he gets taken up to a military prison in the North. At the end of the war, walks home to North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then heads out. That's an important thing to bring up is Confederate, not just Union, but Union and Confederate soldiers in the years immediately after the war, within a decade after the war, are coming together in hunting outfits in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, and you also, there's a couple interesting stories of brothers. The Clarkson brothers, the eldest of the three, he served in the war, and then afterwards they said he grew his hair out long and he went out west and started trapping wolves. Mm-hmm. And then once the buffalo hunt got underway, he wrote to his other brothers and said, come on out, you got it. And these guys killed, I believe, 20,000 buffalo during their career as buffalo hunters. And there's another guy, he writes to his brother, and that guy comes out and he brings a rifle and a canteen and a compass, and they're all his Union issued, army gear. So we begin this story in 1865 because the connection to the end of the Civil War is sort of inarguable. But the hunt itself really doesn't get underway until later, until 6 years later, essentially.
Yeah, there's a little device we use in these American history pieces where we like to bracket the years that we're talking about, which is, no, it's true.
Yeah.
But what we also do is we also hint at what we bracket it. Okay, so with the long hunters, we say in the title, it's Meat Eater's American History, the long hunters, 1763 to 1775. 1763 being the end of the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War. So you get a period of relative peace on the frontier, which allows guys to somewhat more safely go into the colonial frontier to hunt. 1775, of course, is the year before the American Revolution, which brings in this very bloodied period on the American frontier when it becomes really hard to hunt. But then, of course, we explain a lot about like what happens before 1763.
Yeah.
And then a little bit about what happens after 1775. But the era is that with the Mountain Men, 1806. So that's the return of the Lewis and Clark expedition. However, we explain a little bit about the Louisiana Purchase, which is before that. But the action is like the return of Lewis and Clark and their reports of great quantities of beavers in the American West with the collapse of the market in 1840. The hide hunter story, we're saying 65. And as we explain, it's because you can't understand the hide hunters without understanding the Civil War from a standpoint of firearms, from a standpoint of railroads, from a little bit of politics, okay, and from the standpoint of creating a generation of displaced young men. But the shooting doesn't start till about 7 years later.
Yeah.
The shooting really starts in 1872.
Yeah, and on the railroad, on the railroad note, like the transcontinental railroads are authorized during the Civil War, and that's tied to politics and questions about, like keeping California in the Union, and also the northern elected officials no longer have to concede things to the South, so it's really a northern project. So they authorize the transcontinental railroads. They really don't get construction. They don't make a lot of progress in construction until after the war. But the railroads are important for two reasons. One, the sheer logistics of moving all these buffalo skins off the plains is unimaginable without the railroads in the quantities that they're moving them. Two, a lot of these Civil War veterans they sort of cut their teeth as buffalo hunters shooting meat to feed railroad workers. And so they were already making this transition into market hunters before the hide hunt as meat hunters.
Yeah, I'd like to explain one example of that, just because it's a name people are going to be familiar with. If you're sitting there now listening to this, if one buffalo hunter, I'm not saying a hide hunter, a buffalo hunter you probably know is Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill Cody never participated in the hide hunt. Buffalo Bill Cody shot 4,000 buffalo as a meat hunter for the railroad, but then got off on other ventures, got into show business and some high profile guiding. He never made the transition. But other guys like that, like picture you got a guy like Bill Cody, Buffalo Bill Cody, kills 4,000 for the meat. This guy has perfected the skill.
Yeah.
So you had these dudes when the hide market takes off, and we explain in great detail why the hide market exploded. When the hide market takes off, you got guys that are raring to go.
Yeah, and they don't need to figure out how to kill buffalo.
Yeah,
in
mass.
They've had their sort of professional apprenticeship as meat hunters, and they're selling meat not only to railroad camps, like you think about all the laborers needed for these infrastructure projects. Like there's companies that get a contract from the railroad to board and house all of the workers. And then those companies are going out and hiring a guy like Bill Cody to kill buffalo, and it's like 8 a day or something like that. They're also getting contracts to supply meat to forts. Like there's military forts being established across the West to guard the railroad and also to wage war on the tribes. And so there's civilians who are going out and hunting buffalo to feed the soldiers. And then they're also engaging in a more limited scale, selling meat to butchers or meat stores in the East, restaurants, hotels, whatever, as sort of a curiosity. But all these, there's very much like an intact, robust trade in buffalo products before the hide hunt gets rolling.
Yeah, like if you imagine all of a sudden squirrel brains are worth $10,000 a brain, who's best suited to capitalize on that market?
Kevin Murphy.
So people later, 100 years later, saying, did you know that Kevin Murphy used to just hunt squirrels like for the meat? People don't realize this. Everybody knows him as the squirrel brain hunter.
It's so funny because they like the Clarksons, the who I mentioned earlier, the three brothers. I mean, a lot of them will come out west not really knowing what they're doing, and then they get a job cutting wood to supply firewood to a military base, or cutting wood to supply firewood to a railroad camp. And then they realize another one of the guys cutting wood has sort of a side gig shooting buffalo. And then they realize, oh, I could do that. And then they realize if I got a wagon of my own to haul this meat, I could just kill buffalo all the time. And so there's like a series of years leading up to the hide hunt where there's sort of this professional class developing. And there's still like a huge rush of outsiders once the hide hunt gets underway. But like, there's very much like a well-developed expertise around killing buffalo, like especially in Kansas where it gets ripping.
Yeah, we should touch real quick on this idea that we talk about with the long hunters, that oftentimes a long hunting expedition would be people related, strong familial connection, coming out of a specific settlement, oftentimes like in the Yadkin Valley of North Carolina, but coming out of these small agrarian settlements, loosely connected individuals, and they become they launch a long hunting expedition. It could be 40 guys, it could be 5 guys. The mountain men, you have this thing with it's just all these many uprooted, displaced young men sort of randomly thrown together. It's not a family enterprise. With the hide hunters, you do get a little bit back into there is some family stuff.
Yeah.
But we bring up this term, it's a beautiful term, and I'm like surprised I'd never heard it before. It's so great. We get into this thing called siphon. I don't know where you picked it. Randall introduced this word to me. Siphon migration. Where a person will move out west, start doing well in the buffalo hide trade, and then he functions as a sort of siphon and starts pulling people out with him.
It's like, come on out, you guys got to get in on this.
Yeah, so like cousins, brothers, whatever, get on the train or ride, and they're coming out of Ohio, Illinois, Virginia, whatever it is, and they're being drawn out by someone in their social network, someone in their family. They're being drawn out to get in on the bonanza. You also have these organizations that they've called an outfit, who are coming together oftentimes like under specific job titles. It's a hierarchical structure. The mountain men would work for these giant, what at the time would have been like corporations. They had financiers. They're like VC-backed corporations hired the mountain men. There's no corporate structure with the hide hunters. It's like whoever has the money to buy the equipment is the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And they'll be that, usually that guy is the shooter. But then he has like specific roles for specific skill sets. You have a shooter, you have a skinner, maybe you have 2 skinners, you have a camp cook. And these are like assigned roles, and you can climb through the hierarchy.
Yeah.
But it's a job description. It's a skill, and you can go apply that skill. I'm going to go cook for Randall's outfit. I'm going to get sick of that. And the next year, I'm going to go and sign a similar deal and get a job cooking for Phil's outfit.
Yeah. And it's I'm forgetting the name of the historian, but he talks about this idea of crew culture, where you develop, like an industry develops this sort of well-recognized blueprint for how a crew works. And if you make it through a season with one crew, you can pretty seamlessly hop onto the other crew. And we think about this as like guys in relatively dangerous professions. If you think about like logging, like wildfire crews or commercial fishermen. It's often people sort of in dangerous jobs. There's high turnover, and there's like some hazing involved. And once you know the lingo, and once you have your own sort of set of tools, like you can bounce around. And so these buffalo hunting outfits are really small scale outfits, maybe 4 or 5 guys, some 12, 15. I think there, in rare instances, there's some crews of 20, but they all have very well defined jobs, and there's a well defined sort of order of operations in terms of how you kill the buffalo, how you skin them, how you process them, and everybody's doing it the same. And what's sort of to circle back one bit, when you're talking about all the money in the fur business being tied up in like the corporations that are hiring the trappers, the big money in the buffalo hunt story is with these companies that are sort of in the import-export business. They're trafficking in furs and leather and other goods, but they're in Kansas City, sort of these big hubs on the eastern side of the plains, and they are moving these skins by the thousands to tanneries in the east. They're sort of brokers, like middlemen. And they actually are sending flyers out onto the plains explaining to guys how to skin, how to care for your skins, how to like what the process is, what they want. And then essentially all you need is a wagon, which is still a big investment, and a rifle. And you go out and kill all the buffalo you can, and then a fur buyer or a hide buyer, I should say, either you go to town and sell your hides to them at the town, and they're sort of a field agent for one of these big brokers, or they are even traveling around in the field to different camps and hauling the hides away, buying them directly in camps. So the hunters themselves and their crews are sort of these autonomous units on the periphery, and then there's a real a hierarchical network of buyers that sort of vacuum and funnel all this stuff up to places like Kansas City.
When we worked on this, we were struggling to be like, how do you describe the chaos of the Civil War to understand how it's spinning people out? Like, people know how horrible it is. So in World War II, we lost about 250,000 Americans. In Vietnam, we lost 57,000 Americans. In the Civil War, we lost, this is combatants.
And when our population was considerably lower.
Yeah. Between the two armies comprised of Americans, 700,000 dead combatants. In many communities, you took away an entire. In many communities, the war carried away entire generations of men. You in communities, you went and you eliminated people, say 17 to 28 or so. I mean, you had it be where that town lost that bracket of individuals. That war killed off 8% of the white men aged between 13 and 43. Remember I said we lost 57,000 in U.S. soldiers in Vietnam? 50,000 civilians died in the Civil War. 60,000 people lost arms and legs in the Civil War. So by beginning this story in the Civil War, it's like you have literally destroyed huge swaths of the country, and people needed something to go do. And the reason I bring this up, and kind of the reason we focus on this, well, the main reason we focus on this is because it's the truth and it's how things happen. But a big part of a big impetus in like explaining the situation is, I feel that coming and saying, oh, the hide hunters were these sadistic people hell-bent on destroying American wildlife. It's not accurate. I think that some of them, some of them were aware of the destruction they were doing. Some of them in the moment articulated an acute awareness of the destruction they were doing. But there's more to the story than just to be that these were like sadistic, money-grubbing executioners of wildlife.
Yeah.
Like, these were often people that had like not just like little opportunity, no opportunity. And though we weren't using this term at the time about trauma, being shell-shocked, whatever, people coming out of horrific circumstances with absolutely no promise of employment.
Yeah, and I think too, like a lot of them were refugees. Like when we think about the Great Depression and we think about like the Grapes of Wrath, like people heading out looking for work, like hitting the road looking for work. Like that's the situation on the ground in 1865. And there's something like 200,000 people in the South lost their homes. So they are, not only, or maybe their farms had been burned, like their crops had been burned, like they're unmoored from what their lives had been like prior to this. And like we mentioned, there's a clear opportunity in the buffalo market. And then the other side of that is like the 1870s were a time of serious economic upheaval. And there's all sorts of financial panics and businesses failing, people getting laid off, unemployed. And so you find these in these accounts, like somebody's explaining why they became a buffalo hunter. And they're like, well, the grasshoppers ate my crops. And I had to feed my family. So I became a buffalo hunter. There's another story that a bunch of butchers from St. Louis had shown up on the plains looking to cut buffalo because they'd all lost their jobs in a financial crisis, right? And so, like, even after the Civil War, the country's on very rocky footing, and it's it's overwhelmingly clear from the stories that these people left behind that there's obviously some like hunger for adventure and frontier life and all that, but it's so overwhelmingly clear that these are people who are desperate.
Another thing that's kicking out people onto the frontier is the progress of the railroads. Viewed in hindsight, the progress of the railroads was stunningly fast. But at times there'd be pauses. The Northern Pacific Railroad paused in Bismarck, North Dakota, like just shut down. So you'd bring out all these workers and create this job opportunity. And now and then money would dry up.
Yeah. Things
would happen. And all of a sudden it's just like, but we're done.
Yep.
And so here you have people on the frontier who just had the rug pulled out.
And they can't get a bus ticket home.
Yeah. And so that you were sort of like dumping people, displacing dumped people out on the plains, out on the American frontier. And a lot of these guys, if you look at how they creep into it, like Randall said, I mean, they're doing like pretty lowly work, like cutting firewood and then trying to haul firewood and sell it to a military fort. No one's getting rich cutting firewood, but that is putting them in position to be queued up to participate in the hide hunt.
Yeah. One story that is probably worth mentioning is there's a guy named Elijah Cox, who's actually a freed slave. And he served in the Buffalo Soldiers, the cavalry, the all-black cavalry unit. And he gets discharged, and he's discharged in Texas. I believe he's born in Michigan. So he gets discharged in Texas at some point fighting the Apaches, and he doesn't have anything else to do, so he becomes a cook for a buffalo hunting outfit. And then after a couple seasons of serving as a cook, he becomes a skinner. And after a couple seasons of serving as a skinner, one of the hunters in the outfit like breaks his leg or something. And so Elijah Cox gets to be a shooter. And so it's one of these sort of strange stories of like he spent many years involved in the trade, worked his way up, had no it was not a plan that he had, right?
Yeah.
It's just circumstances where he found himself, and ultimately, I think he killed some 700 buffalo.
Yeah, he had
during
an
his
estimate
time.
of how many he got, and I think that when he got cut loose from the military, if I remember right, and it's in we explain it in here. I think he got cut loose from the military from an injury.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
like medically discharged.
Yep.
Yeah,
So here he is. He's just on the frontier.
yeah, with no network, like nothing to fall back on.
Later, when he was asked about it, we were talking about earlier. We were talking about the way people justify it and the way
Yeah.
they kind of like maybe misremember their motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Later, when he was asked about it, his reply was basically like, "All I know is I had plenty to eat and I always had money."
Yeah, and that was during so what's interesting about that is like during the Great Depression, there's all these like oral history projects, and so he was interviewed at the tail end of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
He's still alive, and he's lived through the Great Depression, and he's thinking about the buffalo days, and he's like, I don't know, it's pretty good.
A lot of meat.
Yeah, I what I said earlier contradict. He was born to escaped slaves. So
Yeah.
he was born in
Yeah.
Michigan. His parents were both escaped slaves from the South.
Yeah, the Buffalo Soldiers play into this story a little bit, and we get into much greater detail in the project. But that term, you hear that term often, like even what's his name, Bob Marley
Mm-hmm.
reference. I believe it was the Comanche or Apache. I can't remember who likened the hair
Mm-hmm.
of they likened the hair of these Black American cavalry members. They likened the hair to the wool of a buffalo. So they would say they were a buffalo soldier.
Man, it became like a proud identity for a lot of these guys after the Civil War. Like they're out west, they're serving in the army,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's like a really fascinating. Eventually, they come up to Yellowstone. They're in Montana,
And they're having mix-ups like that. They're oftentimes during this little period that happened down in Texas, buffalo hide hunters are joining groups of buffalo soldiers fighting against Comanche.
Yeah. The situation. Maybe we should get into this, like the phases of the hunt,
Yeah, the three phases.
because it starts in Kansas, really, along the tracks of the railroads. The Topeka, Santa Fe, in particular, Dodge City is like a big hub, and then the slaughter sort of goes on until there aren't any buffalo in Kansas anymore, and the hide hunters push into Texas, and Texas. It becomes a much, like at first they're so far away from any hub of settlement that they're still hauling the hides back up to Dodge City, but they're bumping into Comanches, and there's a real recognition on the part of the Comanches and other their allies that the hide hunters are killing off their economic lifeblood, and so it becomes sort of a very bloody theater for the hide hunt, where hide hunters sometimes are serving as sort of like proxy fighters for the U.S. Army, and the Army is serving as sort of proxy fighters for the buffalo hunters. And then at some point they kill all the buffalo in Texas, and they roll up to Montana, and then in Montana it's sort of a mop up job, and in a couple of years the herds of the Northern Plains are basically blinked out.
It's an interesting point about the indigenous Americans, that when we get into the deerskin trade, like in our long hunter piece, we focus really heavily on these Euro-American, these white long hunters. But the deerskin trade was really built by native hunters. Before these guys like Boone and people started going into that area, there had been long a colonial trade in deerskins. And in the early days of that trade, those deerskins were being harvested by Native Americans and bought in and exported. With the beaver skin trade, there were some tribes wanted nothing to do with the beaver skin trade. Other tribes jumped in pretty heavily. Like the Flatheads were famous for having engaged in the beaver skin trade. The Blackfeet, some historians like to point out how the Blackfeet sat it out, but there's other accounts of the Blackfeet engaging pretty heavily in trading to the north, but they did it. The mountain men would often overwinter with tribes. A lot of mountain men were very tightly associated, like Jim Bridger was very tightly associated with the Shoshone, right? So there's this big Native American element of people in the trade, of people traveling with the practitioners. You get into the hide hunters, and you don't find.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no cultural exchange. There's no sort of shared interests. There's no allies.
No. As we get into it, we got a whole chapter that kind of sets up this thing. When we talk about hide hunters, there was a thing called what we call the robe hunt or the robe trade. There was a commercial Native American trade, which was small scale and very artisan, for tanned buffalo robes that were used as an insulation. Like if you were on a wagon, you could be in Boston riding in a wagon on a cold day, and you have a lap blanket that is a winter-killed buffalo from the northern plains. You could be in the military and be issued a sleeping bag on a polar expedition that could be a winter-killed Indian tanned buffalo robe from the northern plains. So Indians would shoot buffalo at the right time of year in the right location. The women would tan it into a finished good, and that finished good was sold. But that was small.
And there's bottlenecks there's natural constraints on the scale of that trade because of the seasonality, and especially because of that labor part.
Yeah, like a woman
could tan 10 a year.
Yeah, a woman, in addition to serving her family, preparing hides to clothe her family, working on hides to make a tent, she might be able to put out 10 robes a year. A hide hunter that's just hunting for skin, not tanned goods, but just hunting and selling skin, a hide hunter, they would get into long periods where they are killing 30 and 40 a day. There is examples of killing way more than that. We get into some of these extraordinary kills, but routinely, like in good conditions, they're waking up every day and killing 30 to 40. And a woman in a Native American family on the Great Plains might be able to produce 10 robes
and
annually.
And like we said, the hide hunters are only drying the skins out, and then they're being tanned on an industrial scale in the East. There's sort of a bottomless appetite for buffalo skins, and there's really a bottomless appetite for leather at this time because the leather making industry, the tanning industry, has grown and consolidated and mechanized and made all these improvements in sort of process to the point that, like, it's basically like a big gaping maw, and as many hides as you can shovel into it, it can handle it, and it can find markets for them. So the tanning industry is just absorbing this on a scale that, like, native communities could not have during the robe trade era.
Yeah, they're being tanned where you have a native woman tanning a buffalo hide with hand tools on the ground using a buffalo's brain, okay, or a concoction of liver and brain to soften it. When the hide hunters get going, their skins are being tanned in railroad-fed tanneries in buildings that are 300 yards long by companies that own, there's one company we talk about that owns 25,000 acres of timberland.
In Pennsylvania.
Because they want tamarack and hemlock. They own 25,000 acres of timberland to produce bark to make tannic acid.
Yeah, and this is a place, like, if you've heard the term a company town, where the company owns the store, the company owns the houses, you go there, you work for the factory, you go live in a house owned by the factory, and you buy your groceries from the factory. Like, this is a company town in rural Pennsylvania that has 9-story buildings where they're drying buffalo hides, and they're tanning them in these huge vats. They have rows of hundreds of vats, and it's sort of startling when you see photos. And these tanneries continue to operate even after the buffalo. It was like when the buffalo hide trade was going on, they switched over to tanning a majority of their business was buffalo skins. And then afterwards, they simply switched back over to cattle skins.
Yeah. That's one of the more fascinating points, like a discovery that I had in working on this. Oftentimes when we go into these projects, like we'll go into it with some level of pre-awareness about the details. And we'll be able to, like Randall and I can sit and we can kind of map out based on what we already know. We can kind of map out how the story plays out. And we might come up with like, we need to find out this, or we need to learn why this is the way it is. But we come in with like some level of familiarity. And I kind of understand how I came to think this now. I had thought from previous research. In fact, you know what I was going to mention? This story, like I wrote a book, I think it came out, and so I think it was 2008. In 2008, I published a book, American Buffalo in Search of a Lost Icon, and it tells the story of the species from, the Pleistocene. It tells the story of the species from the Ice Age up and into the future. It's this whole overview of the animal. There's a part of a chapter where I talk about the hide hunters. So have you ever seen like an exploded diagram where you're looking at like a piece of machinery and then there's like a little arrow pointing to a part of the machinery, and on the next page is an exploded diagram of that little component? This is an exploded diagram of what is perhaps the most interesting part about that story, where this is taking that couple pages about the hide hunters and American buffalo and blowing it out to something as long as the American buffalo. Mm-hmm. So if you've read that, and I know many of you have, if you read that, there's like little bits of overlapping stuff, but this is like a greatly, this focuses on the most important stretch of a couple decades in that story and tells a very detailed accounting of something that I briefly gloss over in the book. But in that work, I had come to this thing, and you'll see it repeated. Like I know where I got it. This idea that there was a invention, okay, or a revolutionary new process that all of a sudden made it so buffalo leather was like the greatest leather of all time. Mm-hmm. Okay, you'll see this, that they came up with new tanning methods, and all of a sudden, lordy, you could make this great elastic belting out of buffalo hide, and buffalo hide was this super special leather. And that's not entirely wrong, but it's not quite right.
You'll see that in every single thing. Yeah. Almost every single thing you read on the subject. Even like people writing in the 1890s, mm-hmm. Like William Temple Hornaday, like they're saying there's this eureka moment where all of a sudden there's value in buffalo leather. And it's like a boom and a bust. Mm-hmm. And that's just sort of accepted as fact. And I'd never read an explanation of what that was. And I really wanted to find that for this project. And we talked about this a lot. Like, we got to find that. We got to have that in there. Our audience is interested in tanning and working with skins and all this stuff. Like, if there's one thing we need to have, it's that. And it doesn't really exist.
You know, it'd be maybe perhaps a better way of thinking about what actually happened. What's that wood that everybody uses on their decking now? It's like that composite wood. It's like chipped up. It's like chipped up wood with resins and adhesives.
I don't know.
Like the fake wood. Okay, never mind that. Particle board.
Yeah.
Plywood.
Yeah.
Plywood.
Sure.
Okay. Everybody knows plywood.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's say you got a mill and they produce plywood. Mm-hmm. And because of where they're at, what trees they have available, they're producing tons of plywood, let's say with white pine. Mm-hmm. And they develop this strategy and they can use white pine and they're making this really nice plywood. And they're selling plywood like hotcakes. And all of a sudden someone says, hey man, you know how we're paying $5 per unit of wood mm-hmm. on white pine? Do you know that we can get Ponderosa pine for $3? And so they go to their engineers, hey, what happens when you use ponderosa pine? And the engineers go, oh, it turns out if you add a little more resin, it's the same thing, man. Like plywood's plywood. We could definitely use that ponderosa pine. In fact, if it's $3 and not $5, we'll take as much of that ponderosa pine as we can get our hands on.
Yeah.
And then they keep making plywood, and people keep buying plywood. And a lot of these people that are buying it, they wouldn't know white pine from ponderosa pine if they saw it. But it's the product they want, and they're buying it. And then sometime down the road, some guy goes, you know what? The ponderosa pine, they cut it all down. It's gone.
Back to white pine.
I guess let's just keep running that white pine.
That's
then.
great. That's
good
a great metaphor.
It was good while it lasted.
Yeah. I mean,
and it was like, that's a better way of thinking about leather consumption, because they were being like, Asiatic water buffalo? Sure.
Yeah.
Cattle from South America? Sure.
The United
Cattle
States
hides
is
from
importing...
Texas? Sure. Buffalo hides? Why not?
Yeah, like there's the United States is importing leather anywhere it can, or hides from anywhere it can, like sourcing hides. And all of a sudden, with the railroads, they can access however many million hides are just sort of walking around out there on the plains, and it can be sucked into this pre-existing, network. And there's some truth to the idea that there's technological advances. Like the industry as a whole is getting better and better at working with big, heavy hides.
Mm-hmm.
There's some changes in method where they're using hot water, like they're liming them and then doing a hot water bath. And there's actually a guy who calls that the buffalo method, but it wasn't invented for buffalo. It's just sort of like a gradual improvement in processes over time that happen to align with their ability to ship buffalo hides by the hundreds and thousands every year.
Yeah, the challenge is, if anybody that's skinned a deer knows that the belly, right?
Mm-hmm.
The belly's real thin.
Yeah.
The hide's much thicker on either side of the backbone. The inside of the legs is real thin. The hide's real thick up on the neck, whatever. The challenge is, how do you produce the biggest piece of uniform product you can? And so they're doing all this stuff, like they're like imagine basically that you're sanding it down.
Well, and I think we should just, before that, I mean, we're talking, I don't think we've mentioned yet belting.
No, we haven't talked about where all this, like why.
Yeah.
Yeah. The country had always used leather.
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing we wanted leather for, shoes.
Yeah.
Like shoes were leather, tack, horse equipment, harness equipment, all that stuff was made out of leather.
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden they need
belting, which is like, if you picture a timing belt on your snow machine or whatever in your car, like a belt is simply something that at the most basic level takes movement from one place and transfers that movement to something else, right? So one thing spins, the belt spins through it, and the other side spins. Does that make sense? And so if you imagine like a very early factory, it's all gears and cogs, either made out of wood or metal, and you're taking power from a stream, like you've got a water wheel in a stream, and the wheel's turning, and that's turning a big shaft, it's turning a gear, that's turning another shaft, until it gets to wherever you're doing the work with that power, whether it's like a grinding mill, or you could power a saw with that, you could power any sorts of other like mechanical tools with that power, but it all has to be transmitted through one thing moves, another thing moves, another thing moves, another thing moves, because they can't just zap it down a wire.
Yeah.
Like in the age of electricity. And so the leather belt replaces this older system of shafts and cogs and wheels and things like that. And it's revolutionary because you can spread power out across a factory floor in all types of different directions, and you can spread it out to different machines or whatever. And this is something that's invented in America, the leather belt drive, and then it's sort of perfected during the Civil War as like there's this increase in wartime manufacturing. And so that coincides again with The railroads reach the plains. The buffalo can be shipped east. The tanning factories are ready to absorb the buffalo. And there's this, I mean, we're talking about miles and miles and miles of belting in a factory.
Yeah, there's a photo from after the buffalo hide era. And again, they used that leather when it was available, but the wiping out the buffalo didn't wipe out leather. So there's a photo from
a Ford plant.
Yeah, the lathing operation for like the drive shafts at a Ford plant.
Yeah.
And the caption on the photo points out that what you're looking at is 50 miles. It's just a picture of a bunch of people in a factory, all dressed in black and white. That's a joke. A bunch of people at a factory.
All talking like this, huh?
Standing at equipment. And over their heads is nothing but belting.
Yeah.
Because somewhere is a big steam engine running, and they're transmitting power to all these lathes. And it says you're looking at 50 miles of leather belting. But some of this leather belting is 10 feet wide.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, so if you picture an old, like if you ever seen a drawing of an old factory, there's all these people working at machines in neat little rows, and overhead, there's a bunch of stuff, and there's lines coming down to their machines. And it almost looks like a puppet theater, right? And so essentially the way that before the age of electricity, the way that this worked is you had a steam engine, and that's turning a huge belt. And that's called the prime mover of the factory. Like the steam engine begins moving things, and then that belt moves these long shafts that are suspended in parallel rows above the factory floor. Those shafts then are linked together by belts so that when one turns, they all turn. So you have the prime mover, and that's moving a big belt that turns one of these shafts, and then that shaft is turning all the other shafts. And then each individual machine is connected to those moving shafts on the ceiling by more belts. And if you're going to do something at a machine, you essentially have like a clutch, like in your car, because the whole thing is moving continuously. Like the things above you are moving continuously. So if you're all of a sudden, I need to, use my saw or my hammer or my mill or whatever it is, you have like a foot pedal that sort of clutches that timing belt onto your machine, and now your machine's running. And to stop it, you disengage it from the belt again with that clutch.
And that power is always cranking. And they're even running primary belts into other buildings.
Yeah, to other buildings. And if you think about it, like today, if you have a big manufacturing operation, every place you need an outlet or an extension cord. Before electricity, that all has to be connected physically by moving things. Like if you want to move a rock crusher, it has to be connected by moving parts to moving parts to moving parts to the steam engine or whatever is generating your power there. So like when we think about the expansion of the industrial economy, like in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, it's all predicated on the ability of belts to connect machines to steam engines. And so that's like, it's almost this bottomless demand for leather. And buffalo leather does lend itself well to this because of its inherent properties. But as Steve pointed out, like the Ford is still using leather belts in the 1920s, and they're not taking them from buffalo.
Yeah.
Like you could have, it's not like if we hadn't had buffalo leather, we couldn't have built these factories. Buffalo leather just happened to sort of fall into the chute at the right time.
What kind of feeds this idea of some specific thing triggering it is there is a story that comes out of the Kansas plains, and it's very well documented, and it's a really interesting narrative of how this played out. Is a tannery has a desire to experiment with some buffalo skins. So they call like a broker, a guy that deals in buffalo meat and other things out in Kansas. And they're like, hey, we'd like to get 500 hides to mess with. He's not a hunter. He goes to one of these railroad meat hunters and says to a railroad meat hunter, hey, can you get me the 500 hides? So here's a guy, he takes the order, and he needs to find someone to fulfill the order. He contracts a guy, a meat hunter, to fulfill his order for 500. The meat hunter shoots, I think, 551. turns the 500 into the guy that bought him for him, but he's got this extra 50 to burn. Sends the extra 50 to a brother in Boston.
New York.
Sorry, New York. But the buyer who then sold it,
Yeah.
sends the other 50 to a brother who then's like, well, I'll go try to find someone that wants them. He sells them to a tannery. So now you have two tanneries that are sitting on something. There's a tannery sitting on about 500. There's a tannery sitting on about 50. Both of these tanneries mess around with the hides and both come back and say, we'd like a lot.
Give me all you got.
We'd like a lot. And that starts it. Like, that is like, it is a very distinct like beginning.
Yeah, that
And
brother.
that's the beginning.
That brother in New York, as soon as he sells them and the company says we want 2,000 more and probably more after that, he just gets on a train to Kansas and he finds his brother in Dodge City and said, "This is just the business now."
Yep, it's game on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's game on. And it happened so fast that it caught meat hunters by surprise. There's hide hunters that talk about that. There's hide hunters that like remember the day
They heard. Yeah.
they got the news.
Yeah.
Like the day they got the news, where people are like, no. It's the hides, dummy.
Yeah, there's a guy who's out shooting meat and he's complaining to some other hunters that it's too hot out because all of his meat's spoiling before he could sell it. And they look at him and they're like, "Why are you still hunting for meat? You could just
Screw the meat.
Take the hides off and bring them to here and he'll buy everyone he can bring them." And he's like dumbfounded. Because he's still out there trying to cure hams and stuff on the plains and sort of the world has moved past that.
Another one, this is the last part of this that we'll get into right now. There is, if you study this area, if you study this era on like a superficial level, you'll always find out about all the waste. And without wanting to do a sort of revisionist history, let me better explain what I'm saying. The hide hunters wasted enormous quantities of meat, but there's more to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you could picture someone coming to this, depending on their motivations. You could picture someone coming to this and saying like, "It's all a lie. They didn't waste all that meat.
They sold a lot of meat."
Like they sold a lot of meat. And as we got into this, we're like, let me tell you two things that are real true. Man, they sold a lot of meat. But man, they wasted a lot more. You know? You could get into, like, we get into all the numbers on this. You can get into what seems like staggering quantities of sold meat. When you get into the tonnages,
mm-hmm.
the counts on tongues, the barrels of tongues, the train loads of meat,
mm-hmm.
right? The vast quantities of smoked hams.
And they talk about it a lot.
And you'd look and be like, my God.
These guys were resourceful.
Train cars full of meat.
Yeah.
Right? And you could spin this whole narrative about all this meat.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could start going like, okay, let's start trying to do a little math. Let's do a little math. Like, here's a guy, and these guys had meticulous records because they're getting receipts when they sell this stuff. Like,
mm-hmm.
the receipts are out there. Be like, a receipt to Bob, and it's like what Bob got. Like,
right.
For his cow hides, for his bull hides, for his kips or calf hides, for his meat,
mm-hmm.
and like how many pounds of meat and what per. It's like these are like, we are very much like, we talk with long hunters. A lot of the information about the long hunters is because a historian later went and talked to their grandkid.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I swear Grandpa said that he got $2
mm-hmm.
for his deer hides or whatever, and that becomes like the historic record. Some dude's recollection about what his dad told him or his grandpa told him. Here, it's like, there's too much material. There's tons of material.
Yeah.
So you can get into these staggering quantities of meat, and it really does. But then you get into like, let's look at it as percentages.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start looking at certain outfits, and this is just the outfits that did sell meat, plenty of outfits didn't sell meat. When you get into the outfits that did sell meat, and you start looking at their numbers, it's like, man, dude, they sold a lot of meat, but like it seems like about 99%
was wasted.
Like, be like, okay, so they're selling about 6 pounds.
Yeah.
They're selling maybe like, if you look at his whole hide haul, and then you look at his meat receipts, you're like, okay, he's selling about 6 pounds per animal.
But at the same time, at 6 pounds an animal, he's selling 10,000, 20,000 pounds of meat in a year.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
it's a real roller coaster, because you go into like, they wasted all the meat. Then you get into this like, holy cow, they sold a lot of meat. And you're like, wait a minute, they wasted a lot of meat.
But again, it's like the reason they did this is to make money. And so wherever they could squeeze a little extra profit or a little extra revenue to get the stuff that they needed, or tuck a little money like away for a slow season, like if they could haul some meat to a railroad pretty easily, they did it. You know, if they're hunting in super remote areas, they're not trading in meat. But like, if you can get an extra couple bucks off an animal by curing its hams and hump and stuff, like they did that. And so it's a real complicated explanation of it all. But
yeah, here's a interesting piece of this, is kind of show like the hard scrabble nature, but also the a kind of persnickety quality of these individuals when it comes to or like a penny pinching kind of miserly quality to like the economics.
mm-hmm.
There was a product that came from the buffalo that was a stuffing, of mattress stuffing material. And it was, if you picture the forehead on a buffalo, it was called the mop. Okay. That had value. And it was used to stuff mattresses, stuff upholstery. It was hard to get out, hard to pull out. Like they didn't want the mop skin. They just wanted the hair in bags. So these hide hunters, like you couldn't pull it. But if anyone has dealt with animals a lot, you know that like we have a term when the hair starts to slip. Like picture you're walking along the bank of a river and you see a deer and he's like, you know, dead on the side of the river, drowned in the river and washed down. And you go grab a handful of the hair on that thing. What happens when you grab a handful of that hair and pull?
Comes right out.
Comes right. It's called the hair is slipping.
Yeah.
So in the hide trade, even today, the worst thing, talk to your taxidermist. If you're bringing in a deer cape, if you're trying to sell a skunk hide, it doesn't matter. Hair slippage means too late.
Mm-hmm.
It's rotten. Like if you go to your taxidermist with a bear rug or a deer cape and he grabs a tuft of that hair and pulls and half the hair in his hand comes free, you messed up.
Yeah.
It's slipping. It's no good. They would, at times when there's nothing else to do, they would wait till all these, like when they skinned the carcasses, we explain how they skinned them. When they skinned the carcass, they'd stop behind the ears. So a buffalo hide that went to the market is missing its face. Mm-hmm. It's cut off behind the ears. They would wait till the carcass is rotted enough that the hair would start to slip. And then they would go back out into the field and pull mops and stuff it into sacks.
When they're good and rotten.
Meaning, where there's money to be made, they were there to make the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just at times it's like it wasn't efficient. But it's really hard to look at their lives and point out places where you're lazy.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't like a laziness thing.
Yeah.
It was just business, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was business. It was business.
Yeah. And on top of that, not to get into more details, but there's all kinds of wild stories in this, just like the weird, people getting charged by buffalo, people getting pounded in hailstorms, people getting killed, people finding bodies, people doing really weird stuff, people eating weird stuff, people playing pranks on each other,
dying in weird ways. We have a big section about all the people killed by buffaloes that they wounded.
Mm-hmm.
we're working on an animation project. Anyways, there's a guy who shoots a buffalo, gets up to it, it's still alive, pulls out his pistol to finish it off. As he pulls out his pistol, the buffalo jumps up and starts coming for him. He really quickly tries to mount his horse to get away. And in mounting his, because he's got his pistol out now and it's cocked. In mounting his horse, he has a negligent discharge and shoots his own horse. So now the horse takes off wounded. The buffalo is wounded chasing the horse, and then both the horse and the buffalo die.
And he
walks away. Other hide hunters, they go missing. This is a kind of, we give a handful of these stories that play out very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
Bob is off hunting. Bob don't come home at night. In the morning, you go looking for Bob, and lo and behold, there's a dead buffalo laying there, and there's a dead Bob laying next to it.
Yeah.
And Bob is in bad shape.
It turns out that when you shoot buffalo by the dozens, you make some bad shots, and you end up encountering some angry buffalo.
Yep. And Bob is badly bruised.
Yeah.
Anyhow, MeatEater's American History, The Hide Hunters, 1865 to 1883. We never explained 1883. So you know when you hear an interview with an author and they don't want to tell the end?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're in the end, you're like, so did they catch him? You're like, well, I'm not going to tell. Does he die in the end? I'm not going to tell. Well.
Oh, you could do this. Did the buffalo die in the end?
Yes, but what year? Not telling. Not telling. I let out to my, I'm a huge Fury Road and Furiosa fan.
Mm-hmm.
I let out to my daughter early on in Furiosa that her boyfriend doesn't make it through to the end. She was very upset with me for letting that leak. So I hope you're not watching that one. Can you bleep that out, Phil? Thanks for joining. MeatEater's American History. Of course, go back. The Long Hunters. Then check out the Mountain Men. And then dig into the new one available now, The Hide Hunters, 1865 to 1883. We were going to talk about what's next, or we're going to talk about how we're trying to decide what's next. But wait and see. When it happens, we will tell you about it. Thank you very much for listening.